Hello everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the ONLE Networking Show. I'm James West.
And I'm Kelly West. We're the co-founders of ONLE, the business network for people who like people.
Fantastic, thank you Kelly. So we've got loads coming up on the show. We've got our regular items, we've got networking news, we've got Kelly's networking gem, complete with kind of jingle lead in. I'm not going to sing this time. We've also got a new item which we're going to call Only Observations. So that's lessons from members during our meetings. And then, of course, the centrepiece, if you like, is our member spotlight. So this month we've got Pete Avery of We Are Strides.
You mean the low point of the show?
The very brilliant Pete Avery. I'm just going to ignore you. But welcome to the show, Pete.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us. So we're going to start off with some news. Kelly.
Yeah, well, it's not really news, is it? But
it's quite.
It is
the
big.
news.
I think a lot of us are fatigued by it, I'm sure. But as we're filming this, we're obviously the news of the new variant, Omicron, I'm not sure how you say it. But we've been talking about this in terms of consistency of networking and what does that mean for the future of networking? Because we've talked to a few leaders, lots of members of different organisations, and it has upset the apple cart somewhat, hasn't it? Because how can you be consistent in your networking approach when events are or aren't going ahead if you're in person? If you're in person, it's not just whether they're actually facilitating the meeting, it's whether the attendees want to go to it and whether they feel safe to do so. So we're going to talk about that today. And what does it mean for the profile of the people that attend in person in particular? If you only want to do in person, how do you remain memorable? We're talking about that as well. So online, there's lots of different ways you can be memorable, lots of ways you can reach out and connect with people on different platforms. But if you're only walking into a room and meeting someone, how do you stay in that person's memory?
Well, and it's also this point, isn't it? And we were talking about this beforehand, Pete, weren't we? That how can you... There's a definitive split between the people that, yes, I definitely want to do in person, although I think that number is diminishing month by month. And, you know, the more we get variance, the more we get uncertainty, the more events get cancelled. I think they're going to become the minority, if they're not already. But there's also this question of, okay, if there are people that have already decided, as we have, that we're an online network, what about the events that are definitively, no, I want to stay online? Does by definition that mean that the profile of the people going to those events, is it now different? What have you got a view on that, Pete?
Well, the thing now is that we've got choices. I mean, I believe that we did have the choice before, but there wasn't so many online networking groups and it was almost thought of as an inferior. But because of what the last 2 years has forced is the fact there's nothing. The only inferiority is your attitude towards it. If you come with an open mind that actually this can be as powerful or more powerful than in person, then you can run with it. But I just think, now we've got choices. The people who want to do it exclusively in person, well, events are opening back up for them if you want to be online, as we know. There's ONLE.
Who are those people? We're going to have to be quite generalist here, aren't you? But go on.
Well, again, we were talking about this before, weren't we? Particularly from my opinion, I've done a couple of in-person events and I've really enjoyed it to a point. Would I put it as a list of priorities? No, I wouldn't. Would I go because there were a couple of members going to be there or people that I really wanted to see? Yes, of course, I'd see that as a good opportunity to do so. But I have very much felt that it is that dominant voice in the room that takes over. So it would have been back in the beginning of our online journey and lots of others, those members or those attendees that said, well, I can't come because I don't get enough airspace or I don't get enough chance to talk. You can't do that online, can you? So I do fear that in the room there is now sort of a unfair balance towards people that do just want to talk at you a little bit too much.
We are sort of tiptoeing around this, aren't we? But quite broadly what we're getting at is that introverts prefer online networking, the quieter, more the people that like to sit back, observe, listen, which previously were in-person networking because that's where they had to go, even though it wasn't perhaps their method of choice to network. If they're not at in-person events, isn't it just in-person events full of people that want to shout over each other and aren't necessarily the best listeners? You need the balance.
Well, how many networks have you attended in person where if you are giving your 60-second pitch to the room and you look around and there's people on their mobiles, there's people tapping away, they're not engaged. And you could say, well, actually, I'm not engaging by what I'm saying. But actually, until it's their time for the spotlight, they ain't interested.
Yeah.
There's, to use an extremely long word, I would say, well, the online is almost like the democratizing, where everybody does get that equal share of the pie, rather than you'll all get these tiny bits, but here we go, this person can really talk, they're going to dominate. And if you haven't got someone who is a bit dictatorial and going, you're supposed to have 60 seconds, not 60 minutes to talk to the room,
Yeah.
those people will take, it sounds heavy, but, you know, take advantage of, right, I love speaking, I'm going to take over the room.
And there is a way to do that. And in fact, the only talks that we're going to record straight after this is about your sales message and getting that point across. But one of the things we're definitely going to talk about in that only talks is that just saying it over and over again a little bit louder is not the way to make an impact, because people are like, whoa, you know, calm down. So it's going to be an interesting time. Your point about remaining memorable when there's no continuity in in-person events. Talk about that a bit more.
I think depending on the event, whether you get an attendance sheet prior to the event, whether that's online or in person, obviously gives you a rung up the ladder, doesn't it? Because you can kind of see who's going to be there, you can get a feel for the room, and you can kind of prepare yourself a little bit. Also means that you've got a list to take away, so that if you do want to follow up with somebody that you haven't managed to put into a breakout room with or sat on a table with, you can follow up with them. But I think when we're going in to the room cold almost, and you're not, if you're going into the room, you can pick up business cards. Although people have forgotten that we used to have business cards, I think, when they're out there now. So the point here is, what are you leaving with people in order for them to remember you? Now, if you're in a Zoom room, you can put it on your little window, can't you? On your little celebrity square, you can put it there. Or if you've got an attendance sheet, you can have LinkedIn open next to your Zoom window and you can connect with them straight away. My experience of being in person is I've had zero follow-up from anybody that I met, because I think the sole attention has been, oh God, I'm at an event, I'm really enjoying this is great, isn't it? Walked away and gone, hang on, I haven't actually really done anything with that. I haven't actually capitalised on the connections that I've made or furthered, you know. And I do still think there is a tendency to gravitate towards the people you know.
But I think that's that hunter-farmer kind of dynamic in networking, that the people, why aren't those people following up with you? I hazard a guess that because you weren't a prospect for them.
Possibly, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in your networking gem later, aren't we? But definitely food for thought. Just share with us, Pete, because I know, you know, we're an online network within ONLE. We've stuck to that, and we've been quite clear on that for a while. You've got a view from FSB that you're involved in, because you did that poll, didn't you?
We did. We've done it twice. We did it in 2020, when, again, we were predicting, OK, come summer 2020, then autumn, etc. If we throw, you know, we've done it online, and my network, Lambeth and Southwark, actually launched totally online. And FSB grew the networking online from, I think in London we had 2 or 3 networking groups. Now there's, I think we're up to 15. Wow. And it's not just quantity, it's quality, and we can get people. When we put this survey out in 2020, and we did it again 2021, and resoundingly people were going, we want to stay online, because people can visit from all around the UK and beyond. It fits into a time schedule where the meetings are either an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
It worked on so many levels. But if I may, there was something as you were talking that I realised that it's almost like wrong networking, where I know one of the basics is, right, really what you want to do is talk beyond the room. Now, one of the things, whether I'm online or in person, is this, actually, I'm talking to you. No, it's some of the best connections that I've made have been where they've led. Right, if we were to look at an attendance sheet, this is what prompted me. I would go, oh, yeah, I definitely want to talk to these people, and almost feel deflated when I didn't talk to them. But actually, when I look back over my networking, the best results have come from people that I probably looked at the list and thought, I'm not going to talk to Liz. She's an accountant. What do I know? I've got an accountant. But actually, Liz is the person that led me to working in universities.
Yes.
So I my networking in a way was wrong, where looking at the attendance sheet, they work in media, or I want to having a hospitality client. Oh, right, they tick the boxes. Yeah. So for me, I think in the past, I did that wrong, but I still do it wrong to this day when we get the attendance sheet.
We make that assumption.
But the great thing is, because we all get that equal slice of the pie online, are actually, you surprised me. Looking at the black and white on the list, I wouldn't have thought I would follow up with you, but I'm really interested let's have a one-to-one. So that has been a real surprise for me.
Volume in networking is important, because we've said before, haven't we? If I could tell you, Pete, next year, there's the 10 people that you'll meet at networking that are going to be valuable to you. Don't bother going networking. I'll just give you that list. But obviously you can't do that, because so much of networking is the serendipity. I just happen to be in the right place and talk to the right person, which is, like you're saying, you don't know who that person's going to be.
No.
So the best way to approach networking is with an open mind and have as many icebreaker conversations as you possibly can. And I will say this, in-person networking cannot come anywhere close to the volume of those icebreaker connections that online can give you. So if you follow that principle of just need to speak to as many people as I possibly can, and eventually I'm going to find that key contact in amongst all of those other contacts.
Do you think this is part how confident you are with networking, though? Because as we sort of touched on before, and we've said this, we met at in-person networking, but we did sit with our friends. We sat there one day, didn't we? We went, right, well, you sat with Chef Gary every week. I'd go in and I'd sit with the same person.
He just decided to sit next
with you.
Me. Love it, Gary.
But we walk in, don't we? We go, right, familiarity, I'm going to go and sit there. You get shaken up, don't you? And you decide, well, I'm going to try and sit somewhere different or what else. I do think over this last 18 months, it has made better networkers of the quieter people, because they have had to kind of go out of their comfort zone, but then very quickly realise that their comfort zone probably is online. And actually, I'm quite comfortable here because I feel I'm in my space and I'm all right, I can do my bit. I think they've leapt over the kind of in-person hunter networkers because they're doing it properly.
Well, I love the fact that, like, doing the FSB networking, where we've got people who will say, this is my first time. So one of the key things for me when we go into, I always call it the round robin round, I don't know why, but it's the elevator pitch, 6, 9. What I say to people is, well, tell us about your business, but really key is who would be great introductions for you. And a lot of people have said, it was really good, you put us at ease, because, and I talk about, believe it or not, I'm not, because afterwards I will go, that was a terrible elevator pitch or whatever, beat myself up about it. But I almost share it and people go, actually, you made us feel comfortable. And other people who know me will take the mickey and go, God, Pete, that was terrible. Right, Pete set the bar, and I'll go, right, the bar is set really low. Because we don't, all this talk about elevator pitches, it can be daunting and we forget. We also, I think, forget is that there's people who've never networked before. So for them, the online is isn't this the only way? And if you, good name for a networking group there. That probably if you talk to some people, they go, what do you mean get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do this, that? And I just think that there's a natural, you get drawn to stuff. But for a lot of people who've never done in-person networking, for them it's, this seems to work really great. I liked, and the feedback afterwards is, what could we improve? And they're going, no, I like the fact that there was a structure. We knew that it was going to be 60 seconds. You told us what would be good in it. And I will prompt people. I'll go, because you can tell that some people are nervous. And I've been doing it for years. I get nervous. That's part of me actually running it, is the fact because it lessens my nerves.
This is the in-person thing. We've noticed this. When you go back to in-person stuff, even us without, we're brilliant at networking.
If you do say so yourself.
Of course. But who do you go and talk to? Do I go and speak to those two people that are already in a conversation? What's my icebreaker question? How do I do small talk? Online, you don't get any of that. You're told when you're going to speak, you know what you're going to say, and then it's a case of, right, all I've done is broken the ice. Let's now have a follow-up conversation. So, yeah, well, it's going to be an interesting few months, isn't it?
It will be interesting.
Fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, well, let's move on.
Yep.
Let's go on to our new item, only observation. So the idea of this, at each of our meetings each month, we ask a question as part of the intro, because again, like Pete's saying, good to kind of signpost and give people familiarity of the format. And the question we've been asking this month is about how would you sum up, or what's your one word for 2021? What's your word for 2022? It all merges together, doesn't it? Because the idea is based on Naomi's only talks last month, which would be this month. This is very confusing for me, timelines. We're talking about the importance of kind of ditching what happened last year, giving it perspective, moving on. You can't embrace the new until you've got rid of the old, and you can't move forward positively until you acknowledge the good stuff that's happened. That's kind of the message. So some of the things that have come out from just that simple question, and I've got a couple of names to give a shout out to. So Jenny Eriksson, very brilliant Jenny out in Norway. Yes. She's got 6 foot of snow outside her.
I don't think it was 6 foot.
Waist height.
A little bit of an knee high, but even still, that's enough.
She said this, momentum is everything, so remember to celebrate the small things. Such an important point, isn't it? Because we can there is a lot of negativity around at the moment, isn't it? So celebrating the small things. So good shout, Jenny. Denise Willier, she's becoming quite a regular on here. She's got she says some gems. Hold your nerve. I thought that was a really good point, because it's very easy to panic as a business owner and think that's not quite working. I need to overhaul. I need to change. And like she said, just stick with what you know and what you're good at, and just have faith that it's going to come good. So hold your nerve. Tam Goldsmith, her word was global. They've gone global this year, and she credits a lot of that with the move to online. It's been really important to them. Global is obviously huge for ONLE going into 2022 with New York. But I think it's really important to remind all small business owners in the UK at the moment, you're not a UK business, you are a global business. You just don't have global clients yet. But it's absolutely achievable with the right approach. And the next few only talks are about things like that. Couple of last things. Tracy Howell said, let's be fearless. We've spent too long living in fear. Be bold for the new year. Nice message. And then Chris Lomas, I might get you to say something about Chris, but him and his wife have moved out to Moldova, and they've set up a charity, and they are helping children that have had a very rough ride, awful upbringings, etc., giving them hope. So he said, we are hopeful. I think that's the name of the...
That's the new name. I'm not sure if we were allowed to announce that, but yeah, Chris Lomas.
Something around that. There might be a new
Reach
name.
My
Or there
Street.
might not be, just to be clear. Go on.
Reach My Street, yeah. And really just a shout out to Chris, because in a really tough 18 months, Chris has gone and put himself right amongst it in Moldova, and is just helping so many people. If you don't know him, check him out on Facebook. Like I say, Reach My Street, and then it's going to be Hope for. Just the work they're doing. I could sit here and talk about him for hours, but yeah, look him up.
But again, online, he could become part of our network through not having to come and see us. And I think that's one of those huge benefits, that we are scratching the surface, aren't we?
Most definitely.
Not just getting business, but also being able to help.
I think, you talk about Chris, because he was at one of the your only networking that I attended, and it was humbling. It really puts stuff into perspective. And when I look at the networking online that's happened for me in the last couple of years, has actually been where there's things where people will say something and you think, actually, I can help because of introducing. There was a young lady who spoke, and her journey is all to do with eating disorders. And I reached out to her afterwards and have been able to introduce her to various schools, various different things. And actually, that was a lovely, rather than this networking being about me and what I want, this is wonderful, forget the ego, but actually, wow, I could help. Yeah, I've done the things because she was very eloquent, as Chris was. This is what we're looking for. And you go, actually, this maybe I could help with, which on a day-to-day thing for my mental health was, you talked about the small things, right? Forget about the first world problems. What are the issues that people really face that really matter? Eating disorders, the problems, like Chris is doing. And those, when I've gone to meetings and there's people there doing that, you sort of like, it doesn't matter if I give a really crap speech, because the fact is, wow, this is wonderful. If I can help any of these people in a small way, and I think that again is the power, as you said, that the online networking is, that Chris can be wherever he is, as this young lady was, and the reach can just grow out. So that's been a wonderful thing.
It's hard to quantify, isn't it? And it does sound a little bit hippie-ish when you talk about things like this, but there is a lot of, in networking, a lot of karma and the power of positive energy. So if you are able to help people, because I think we think charity and causes, it's all about giving money. It's not. Often, you know, you've got a network, Pete, of people, we've got a network that just sometimes connecting that person with that person can change things for both parties. And again, that just comes down to having that.
It was raising awareness. Both of the examples that I thought of, they were coming along to raise awareness, and people were so keen to help, which was wonderful.
It's good to see.
Very much so.
Excellent. Okay, it's that time again. It's Kelly's networking gem.
Thank you, James. Thank you. So, today, stating the obvious again, but I always think the best tips are the ones that you just
You
forget.
should never preface it with that, by the way, because what's obvious
It's
to you
always
is not obvious,
This
obviously.
is true. It's true. Yeah, ignore that. It's not obvious, so I'll tell you it anyway. So, kind of following on from Pete's point about giving when you're networking and that feeling of, wow, I've managed to help that person. I think my equivalent with that would be when you see a Facebook post or an Instagram and you know that somebody's commented on it that's met at networking because of you and you've given them that connection. That's my sort of goosebump moment, because I think, well, that's great because they know each other because of me. But in order to be able to do that properly, how do you track that? How do you keep note of that? Because particularly now with online networking, we are networking a lot and we're making lots and lots and lots of connections. And I fell foul to this last week. So I had about 6 one-to-ones one day and I think 4 another day. I sat down the next day to do everything that I said I would do out of all of those 10 meetings and went, I literally can't remember who I was going to connect with that person. And I emailed the member and said, I am so sorry, didn't write it down. Who did I say I was going to connect you with? Because I didn't want to ignore it. But the point there being, stating the obvious here, a notebook, guys. Just a one-stop shop notebook system, pad, whatever it might be. I've spoken to a few members lately who've got their own, they've devised their own versions of this on Canva and they'll print it off for each meeting. We obviously provide the networking attendance sheets and we give you space to write notes on. But what are you doing when you're having those interactions and those conversations in one-to-ones in between? So whether that's you just write it in your diary, it's what I've done today and I need to make a note to do that, highlight it, get it done, because the worst thing about networking is when somebody says they're going to do something for you and then they don't do it.
Yeah.
So I think just keeping a check of what it is you're saying to people, the conversations you're having, a couple of things there. It enables you to make a note of when you want to touch base with them again, because we all know one conversation doesn't make a relationship. And then it also, if there's things that come out of that meeting, you may have said you're going to do something, or the person may have said that they would contact you with details. You can just keep a track of it.
Just be the one that's proactive as well,
Be
because a lot of people do fall into this trap of not saying or not doing what they said they were going to do. Be the person that does it. Be the one that makes the LinkedIn connection and adds the note. There we go. There is Kelly's monthly networking gem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to the interview. I've got a bio written for you and everything.
You've written my bio. This should be interesting.
This is where he goes, did I?
He was born the son. Landed gentry.
Pete Avery. What? Oh, this is badly written. Has been a journalist for Esquire, an art director for the likes of Condé Nast and The Guardian, and worked as a brand and messaging consultant for businesses such as Honda, John Lewis and Lloyd's Bank. All correct?
They are all correct. I mean, and what? Yeah, I mean, all it is words and images to tell stories. Really, if you want to boil it down.
Oh, I
that's
didn't
essence.
ask you that.
All right.
Still
Oh, of course,
doing the bio.
you've got the bio, haven't you? I'm going by what you say. I shouldn't interrupt and correct you.
The common denominator running through this extraordinary career is communicating your number one selling point. Pete, welcome to the ONLE Show.
Thank you, Kelly and James. And I'll try not to interrupt unless I'm prompted.
So, from journalist to art director, how did that pan out?
Well, actually,
it begin?
It was the one. If we go back in the mists of time, all right. Well, when I was at school, I was good at English and I was good at art.
Okay.
Went to art college. Whilst I was at art college, I was doing a degree in graphic design.
Okay.
And we got set a project by an advertising agency to create an ad campaign. And when it came to being critiqued, the art director from the agency said to me, "Have you considered a career in advertising?" I said, "I don't even know what one is." He said, "You've got a strength of communicating both visually and in words." So I went into working as an art director. And we are blessed with the English language of what you can communicate and be playful with words in a very simple way. Don't overcomplicate. And for me, the visual is always an integral, because don't we all think it, we don't think in terms of typing stuff out in our heads. We think visually first. And so for me, words and images have always stimulated me. So first and foremost, I was, the background was design. Whilst at college, I started doing a fanzine because music was a real big passion of mine. Cut to me working on the NME as a designer, as art director. And it's a really small team. So you all become friends, you're socialising. And one of the reviews editors said, "Pete, you like all this American rock stuff?" It was grunge. And so I went out and started reviewing. And from there, I ended up with a parallel career writing about music. So it was, it really was right place, right time. And if you want, that was almost like micro networking, because we were all working together. They found out, blimey, this guy loves his music. He's a designer. Would he write for us? So that's how it all started.
That is quite an unusual blend, isn't it? To be visual and words, because they tend to, it's like websites, isn't it? That you typically get copywriters for websites and designers for websites, and they have to work out how to work together, but you can kind of do both. Isn't that unusual?
Do you know what, when I was right back at the NME, and it was the designer, and they were going, "So you can write?" And I used to turn around and go, "Yeah, I can read as well." It's amazing, isn't it? The skills I've got. For me, it's just I don't know, if we go right back to childhood, picture books. Do we separate? I know for a lot of, there's some writers who are illustrators. In fact, one of the guys, Rob Biddulph, who I work with at The Observer, he writes and illustrates. He started as an illustrator first and then developed his story writing skills. So for me, I suppose it's because it's me. I'm going, am I really that unusual? Don't we all communicate in visual, even we doodle? So for me, I've never separated.
Well, we think you're pretty special anyway, Pete, which is what matters. Are you going to name drop? Give us any little, good little anecdote about NME times?
Well, do you know what? Because people always want to know, and so I pick up on the fact of going, well, if you talk to Bono, of course, he'll be going, "Oh, yeah, Pete Avery, one of my best friends. I remember when we were backstage and all that." It's, I don't know. It's like any anecdote. It's great when you're there, but when you relay it, people are sort of like, "So you met Burt Bacharach and all you could say to him was, 'I loved your music soundtracked my growing up.'" Because I couldn't, well, I'm going to turn around and go, "Yeah, did you watch the Grand Prix on Sunday?" Which maybe I should. So the anecdotes that I've got, I just don't think are particularly that interesting. It's one of the key things that a lot of people, and I'm probably going ahead, the fact that I used to work on Top Gear. Does that come up in your bio?
No,
oh, right.
We want to know about
but
it.
No, but the fact, when I talk about my days on Top Gear, when I was, people always want to know, so what's Clarkson's like? And all, and it's just, well, we didn't engage in banter. Yeah. I would, the most I've ever talked to James May is, he would hand me the keys to something and say, "Yeah, watch, it's when you go for first gear, you'll probably put it into third." Right, okay, James. Yeah, and I'll get it back to you, 5 o'clock tonight. that was the level of engagement that I had with the presenters on Top Gear, because they did what they did. The producer, if you want an anecdote, the producer of Top Gear, or who was and now on Amazon, I know very, very well. But that's a total aside, because I knew him socially anyway. We were in a band together, but that's another story.
So you're not going to write like a dirt dishing autobiography, are you?
Man, do you know, this one I was thinking, I don't, how many biographies, especially like the music ones, have you read? And it's just sort of like, you might as well be right. You know, it's a bit like social media posts for me. It's sort of like, I don't really want to know about what you have for breakfast. So for me, I suppose it's having a young son and trying to tell him anecdotes, and he's just sort of, I'm just his dad. It's sort of like, they aren't, I don't think, they exist in my memory of the things that I did, but I don't think they're of any interest to anyone else.
What a shame.
So,
Nonplussed by celebrity.
Well, look, when we've got another hour-long episode, I'll dig some stories out.
So he's basically saying, I'm only going to give you the good stories if you get me back on the show.
A good anecdote, if you want to look it up, is the fact that I almost wrote off Jeremy Clarkson's £100,000 Range Rover.
That's quite a good one.
And there's photographic evidence.
What did you do to it?
Okay, well, when you're, as an art director, I wanted to get really great cornering shots of his Range Rover.
Yeah.
Range Rovers are really hard to get great cornering shots where they're
tall,
leaning and throwing the dirt up. So I was doing a hairpin bend, and I was going faster and faster and faster until, to get the shot, basically I almost ran the photographer over. I went completely off-road. He had to dive through a hedge. So the sequence of shots is the car come around with me gripping on, and then there's the final shot is of a field, because he literally had to. But afterwards we were going, that's great. And we were laughing about it, going, just imagine if you took that car back and you actually had pranged it. This is Clarkson's own. Very own. We got the shot, that's all that mattered. And, the photographer lived to live But,
and we've got our anecdote, so we can move on.
There you
now.
go. Yeah.
Career highlights, because you've, in the capacity of working for some of these organisations, what's the thing or things that make you think, yeah, that was quite good that I did that? Knowing that you're very humble.
I'm always collaborative. It's like I never say I work for people, I work with them. Collaborations, the people I've met, the relationships that I've built, the stuff that I've learned, because every project, I'm doing a thing at the moment where it just starts by saying no two projects are the same, even though as you approach them, you think they probably are. Everything is different. So for me, I love learning new things, and we do it when we're networking or one-to-ones. We learn. Travel's been brilliant. I've had the opportunity to work in places like China, Sweden. Wow. Those are the great things, the opportunities, the things that I've seen, the people I've worked with. Those are the really great things. And I built lovely relationships with people around the globe. The initial thing was through a work situation. But as I say, my thing is you get the best out of people if you collaborate. So even
really
that,
lovely.
But it's true that one of the things that I learned really early on is if you work with a photographer or a videographer, you don't use them as an operator. They are creatives. So you work collaboratively. What's the better? I was thinking of doing this, because the end result is so much stronger, rather than me walking around going, well, of course, I'm the art director from The Guardian, and what I say goes. It's sort of like, and you miss out on so much because you just got your head in the clouds. So for me, it's, I always say to people, a good day for me is learning. And we learn through experience and other people.
So this messaging, you're very much in that area of helping people with their messaging, what makes them sellable, etc. Why do people get that so wrong? Why don't we intuitively know that's the thing that I'm good at? That's the thing that people will want to buy. Any idea?
Because we get tongue twisted. Even it's really hard to do it for ourselves, and we're all passionate about what we do, even if it's just making nuts and bolts. We are passionate about those. And we believe that everyone we talk to will be equally as passionate, equally understanding of what we do.
Yeah.
And we will talk about the minutiae. We'll go, picking on photographers, the amount of people who go, oh, I've got this kit and this does this, that, and the other. And it's, people want to know what's the benefit of working with you. This is the thing that we all are victims of. We talk about what we do. No. What's the benefit that people want to hear? Why choose you? Okay, yeah, but I've got the best monkey wrench. Yeah, that's great. You're a plumber with a lovely monkey wrench, but what's the benefit for the end user? Well, I can use it 24/7. Now we're getting so you're on call. It's but it isn't an easy thing, and I'm lucky that all I am is a problem solver. The problem often is linguistics, but again, I get carried away where I'm suddenly thinking in terms of, oh wow, you could do this, that, and the other with this. But it's not an easy thing to, same with the 60-second. How do I get across? It's a very good, hi, I'm Pete Avery. If you want strap lines or selling points, I'm your man. It's sort of like, for most, what's the benefit? What is it? Right. Strip that away is, would you like more sales inquiries? Would you like more engagement from your website? Yeah. That's sort of like, what's the selling point?
Do you want people to nod and smile when you say what you say, or do you want them to kind of look away looking bored? Well, it's that idea, isn't it?
Well, I talk about messaging, content, whether that's online, offline, whatever it is. And the same with your elevator pitch is, think of it as a conversation starter. What you want is someone to lean in and go, I'd love to know more, rather than, I'm not really interested in nuts and bolts. Oh, look, there's Kelly and James. I'm going to go. It's get across. I mean, one of the great opening lines is to say to people, I wonder how I could help you. But that, for me, is the ultimate. Boil everything down for whoever I've worked with is, would you like more customer engagement? Would you like more people to make inquiries?
Yeah.
That's, it doesn't matter really how I go about it. And that always comes from me learning. I've been really lucky to work within the Chinese market, and you can't take your Western view. You have to learn about the Chinese market and their attitudes. And again, that's really enlightening because then you can communicate. Not that I had to learn Mandarin, but yeah.
You've got to see it through a different perspective, haven't you? Which is a big part of messaging. Just networking. How did you get into networking? Has your opinion of what networking is changed?
Okay, so until a few years ago, I'd worked within agencies, and then I found myself working with smaller businesses as a sole trader, really. And it was a web developer. This is the connections thing, that the web developer said, I've never worked with someone designing and doing the content of a site that I can literally just take and code and it works. And I was going, that's great. But I thought we worked collaboratively. And he'd said, yeah, would you like to come to breakfast for me? And I was, whoa, I know we've worked well together. But he was going, no, it's networking. And I was going, what? And he's going, yeah, you get up at the crack of dawn and from 6:30 you have a breakfast with us.
It is abstract, isn't it, when you think about it?
What? And he said, yeah, and you stand up. We take it in turns to stand up for a minute and talk about ourselves and our businesses. What? And then I've got to pay for that. Yes, it's only this amount. This is what he paid for a year. This is what it is. I was like, but I trusted him. And I thought, right, okay, he's invited me to something that he thinks would be of benefit to me. So I went along and I absolutely hated it. I was totally a fish out of water. In 60 seconds, I could probably only just wake up and stumble what my name was. And again, if I opened up again, I'm Pete Avery, I'm art director of The Guardian. Right, next. It's like, what? Hold on a second. Or the person comes in with who ordered sausages? But I'm doing my elevator pitch. But I realised that looking at the other people, I could learn a lot.
Oh,
that was my thing. We're back to the learning. It was the fact that if the one on this shoulder was going, this is terrible, never ever do this again. This was going, but you can learn an awful lot. I went with this shoulder. And the amount of breakfast that I had in the end, but that's another story. So yeah, it was never it still isn't my natural. I know I can give it this if I'm relaxed. Well, it's either relaxed or nervous. If I'm talking on behalf of a client or work, presenting that, brilliant. I've done, talks for the Arts Council, all sorts of stuff. Because I'm talking about, it's almost like in the third person. I can leave me out of it. That's fine. But talking about me or Stride or whatever is just, can't I just show some work? Look, I designed this logo, which in a way isn't a bad thing because, to be honest, really, I've always hidden behind the work. So networking isn't my natural forte. We would talk about the wallflower. My natural thing would be, lovely breakfast, right? Get up the 60 seconds, make some notes about other people. Yeah, I'll do some one-to-ones. But I never felt comfortable. And in fact, this shoulder again got me into trouble because it was going, they want the social secretary, whatever it was called. It's sort of like, why don't you go for that? So I sat up at the top table for my years in BNI, and because it was this thing of sort of like, actually, I can just be a wallflower and up here, and I know the structure, and I felt weird. It's a bit weird. The sort of like for wallflower, I will sit up at the front, but it wasn't.
Because you've got a job, you've got a reason to be there.
It was more. I think it was the fact that I had a role to play, even setting up the meeting, breaking the meeting down afterwards. You're absolutely right. There was a purpose to it, and maybe my thing is needing that purpose to it.
And also, did you pick up on the fact that isn't irony might not be the right word, but someone who's so good at messaging navigated through networking by the realization that I can enjoy this and benefit from this by learning from what others are saying rather than worrying about your own messaging. Because we've said this before, haven't we? People are less interested in what you say than you think because everyone's thinking about what they're going to say. So don't worry about it. Yeah. Just listen to people, learn from people. That's the way to get into networking.
We're back to when we talked about Chris and being humbled.
Yeah.
That, in a way, it sounds, for quite heavy subjects, it's almost like a bit of light relief in the fact of, here's someone I can spin it round from rather than what can I... Oh, actually, I could do... Well, I can do something for you.
I still think you could go into a networking event and go, hi, I'm James, I do websites, and never say anything else other than that. Because if you then went, what I'm really here to do is learn about how you guys use websites, how you market. I want to know about all your businesses. I want to just talk to you and find out. I think you could do really well.
You're true, because I attended something recently and due to nerves and whatever, it was online and they hadn't really, it was almost like the 60 seconds was sprung on us. And I just said, I'm Pete Avery, we are Stride. I work with startups. I knew that there were startups was on the agenda, and I said, well, this is true. I said, I work with startups and make them more investable. And from an investor's point of view, it makes the startups, I increase their chance of success, and left it at that. I had 2 or 3 people get in contact. It was that succinct, because actually, at the root of, I knew that there were people who were the talk was about startups, and that's part of what I've done in recent years. And it was just that succinct. Why listen to me?
If you had 60 seconds, would you have tried to embellish it and maybe lost the purity of that message?
Well, suddenly, in a way, you've got, as you say, you've got that one message. Well, I can now dovetail in a couple of sort of, and
I also
what was like a strong red to begin with suddenly becomes paler and paler and paler, because I think it's like with anything, there's, as we know, with websites or if you meet people in person, there's a fight. Within 5 seconds, you make a decision. With websites, I say to people, it's key you get your message across straight away, because people will bounce, they'll leave within 5 seconds. Yeah. And then I know, I'm not a scientist, but I know people have said about science that we make opinions within 5 seconds of people. I mean, that completely against never judge a book by its cover, because we do it all like 5 seconds, bush.
Yeah.
Such a good point, isn't it? We're going to have to wrap up there. That's flown by, isn't it? Pete, thank you.
No, thank you.
Stimulating, very good conversation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
as usual.
Chats, yeah.
This has been The Only Show, episode 4. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you back here next month.